Hello and welcome to the IR Thinker, where we explore the world of international relations one critical issue at a time. I'm Martin Zupko. Poland plays many geopolitical roles in contemporary international relations, yet the country's geopolitics is often overlooked because of its internal politics. Consequently, there is a cardinal question: how should we understand Poland's strategic culture in relations to the world politics nowadays? We'll try to find some answers with my guest today, Dr. Piotr Pietrzak. Hello.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you much for your kind invitation, Martin.
Piotr is a co-founder of Statu Nascendi think tank, an independent political analyst and a lecturer at the Vistula University in Poland. He is the author of On the Idea of Humanitarian Intervention, a new compartmentalization of IR theories, where he attempts to develop his own approach to IR theories called In Statu Nascendi, which means in the state of being born. And this is a very interesting when author or scholar attempts to build own understanding of international relations. So just before all the questions about Poland geopolitics, can you please say or explain in 3-4 sentences what does that approach mean?
I really love your question. It is indeed a very good comprehension of the ontology in Statu Nascendi. The idea is a little bit like English school solidarist approach, but the essence of that is to bring all of the IR approaches to one table and to brainstorm ideas as they actually approach us and choose the best possible explanation or choose the best possible concepts and don't discriminate, don't go with cherry picking one approach, which is, I know, offensive realism or defensive realism or liberalism or constructivism or Marxism or English school constructivism. We need to be aware of all of these approaches. We need to pay close attention towards the development in IR theory because it's a very vibrant field of study. But I think that sometimes we specialize in our own approaches so much that we lose track of what is happening basically next doors. So it's actually good to bring everyone to the same table of the discussions and try something new, try something more holistic, try something more open-minded and brainstorm these ideas till the moment when you actually are comfortable with the strength of these concepts.
In your latest article, you work with doctrines. And we know United States, they work with doctrines, Russia, China, all big major powers. But we don't know that much about the Polish doctrines. So let's speak about them. And in this first block, there are 3 doctrines I would like to touch. The first one is Giedroyc-Mieroszewski Doctrine. The second is Brzezinski Doctrine. And the last one is Sikorski Tusk Doctrine. So in the first Giedroyc-Mieroszewski Doctrine is a foundational political framework that advocates for the reconciliation and independence of Central and Eastern European nations. And the core tenets are so-called ULB, Ukraine, Lithuania, and Belarus. There is rejection of imperialism. It requires renunciation of historical Polish imperial ambitions. And also, touching Russo-Polish relations, it argues that Poland and Russia can coexist only if they basically give up imperialist policies. And this doctrine is the old one. It's basically the first one that you mentioned in your article. So to what extent is this doctrine relevant for Poland today, and which legacies has it developed throughout the years?
Well, this is one of the strongest doctrine which we have had, which we've developed during this 20th century. Giedroyc is a, let's say, national hero for Poland and for Ukraine as well. For Lithuania, he was exceptional scholar. His basically work speaks for itself. The strength of it is basically incredible because he was one of the first scholars who basically overcame this concept of imperialism, that Poland is such a strong superpower and we need to basically have great borders and we need to have as much territory as we possibly can. We need to compete against Russia and so on and so forth. He actually came up with the idea that we need to support each other in Central and Eastern Europe because there are forces far stronger than, for instance, Poland, Ukraine, Belarus, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, and so on and so forth. And if we work together, we are more likely to become independent. So he did say that without independence, Ukraine, there is no way to for Poland to be independent. But essentially, he extended that idea for every single state in Central and Eastern Europe. And historically, we know history, so it was either Germany or Russia who was basically trying to dominate the region, sometimes Austria and Hungary. But essentially, this is the essence of Polish the geostrategic thinking. He wasn't a geopolitician, but his ideas are so robust that they influence many generations of geopoliticians because they are actually strong and they are still relevant even in 21st century, especially relevant after 2014, 2008, and 2022. So without this doctrine, I don't think that Morawiecki government or Tusk government would be so inclined to basically support Ukraine to this extent.
The second one is the Brzezinski Doctrine, which refers to former US National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski, and it's his grand strategy to peacefully undermine the Soviet Union. And this goes also to the Cold War, to the post-Cold War vision, and it argues that the Poland is very important geopolitically on the geopolitical map of the world. Then, after some years, NATO was also very important because Poland entered the NATO. So this has formed as a bloc. So when we speak about this doctrine, what's the legacy for today and how people see Zbigniew Brzezinski? Because I know that for some people in Poland, it's a slightly controversial figure.
Oh, yes. Well, good question again. I guess that my interpretation of Brzezinski's doctrine suggests that Poland has to be more active. And in all honesty, you will not find the term Brzezinski doctrine in academic literature. You would perhaps, if you Google Brzezinski doctrine, you will find my suggestions on my academic papers or chapters, which basically want to project that. But from my perspective, as someone who is interested in the geopolitics, geoeconomy, and in particular interested in history of Poland and the region. So from my perspective, Brzezinski, who was the President Carter security advisor, he was basically strengthening the geopolitics of United States. But we can adopt some ways of approaching global reality at hand from his perspective, and we can adopt it to Polish circumstances because it's suggested that in order to achieve certain objectives, you need to be a little bit subversive. You need to use a little bit more policies which are unpredictable. You need to surprise your enemy, and that is particularly relevant for Russia and Russian Federation. He was basically very active for a good 70 years before he passed away, and he was working on containment against Soviet Union, and then after containment against the spread of neo-imperialism under Putin. So it was, in essence, the idea that in order to stop Russia and stop Russian expansion, we need to have more holistic approach and try to derail Russian imperialism by encapsulating Russia or building a strong coalition of countries which basically border Russia and try to promote human rights, promotes definitely promotes demoliberal values and export democracy to these countries. So the spread of neo-imperialism, the Russian neo-imperialism, would be stopped, and the countries who surround Russia, if they unite, if they form a coalition, they will be more protected by doing so. And this is relevant when we take into consideration what's happened in 2008 in Georgia, what is happening in Ukraine ever since 2014, and all of the cognitive warfare which Russia is basically projecting against every single country in Central and Eastern Europe. Active measures, those are serious issues which need certain approach which is more holistic from this perspective.
The last doctrine is in your latest article, Sikorski Tusk Doctrine. And many argue that there are no official documents, no strategy, no institutional framework. So why should we treat it as a doctrine rather than as a retrospective intellectual construction? And what are the main tenets of this concept? What's your main idea of it? And why Sikorski Tusk? Why those two?
Of course. So I understand where you're coming from, because there is no agreement in the literature on the subject of what actually Sikorski Tusk Doctrine composes of. I give you that. But this publication, this latest chapter, which I've published with IGI Global, is not 100% academic. It is more policy making analysis. But I stand by it because it is a fruit of quite a comprehensive observations, collaborations, and brainstorming debates with experts and with my students who are basically at one point they would become future experts as well. I produced this research in order to bring certain approaches to light, and I relied on foreign policy experts, both domestic ones and the ones from abroad. And it is this research is prepared neither for government nor for the opposition, and I'm actually quite transparent about it. It's not like any other of my publications related to IRTR, where I try to be very objective, very academic in this respect. Despite all the fact that the research itself doesn't strictly adhere to the conventional academic norms, its geostrategic importance is possibly quite high, because I try to describe how Tusk and Sikorski approach geopolitics, and there are certain elements from Brzezinski, there are certain elements from Giedroyc as well, but in order to basically comprehend it, we need to acknowledge that these leaders who are in charge of the country ever since 2023 acknowledge that we need to help Ukraine no matter what. So this is a part of the Giedroyc strategy, but we need to be more active. The time from being passive in Poland is over, and it's been over ever since 2014. So in order to approach certain foreign policy choices, we need to have strong foundation which would redefine the Poland's geostrategic culture. And from this perspective, how do I understand the geostrategic or strategic culture? Those are the sets of fundamental principles and long-term goals that guide the country's decisions on how to approach security, foreign policy, and national interests. And from Poland's perspective, Russia is the main adversary, and by attacking our allies, we basically notice that Russia is disrespecting Poland's right to establish strong confederation of Central and Eastern European countries, and Russia is trying to contradict our strategy. Our strategy is to provide each and every one of these countries with the alternative, with the enlightened self-interest, so-called, which suggests that if we are doing well in Poland, we have to establish the same environment for everyone else, for every single country which basically surrounds us, and that includes Russia, as a matter of fact. For a very long time, Polish foreign policy was based on Skubiszewski Doctrine. Skubiszewski is one of our founding fathers of Polish diplomacy after 1999. His biggest dream was to establish friendly relationship with every single country in the in our area, and we were successful with 7 of our neighbors. We are not successful with Russia because of Russia's choice of being hawkish, being aggressive, and attacking our allies. And we cannot accept that. We cannot allow that to keep happening. And for this reason, we need to be more active, and we need to adopt the same tactics like Russia. I mean, not the same in a way that we would use the same cognitive warfare or active measures. No, on the contrary, we will expose Russia's basically own contradictions. We will expose the very idea of behind Tusk and Sikorski doctrine suggests that by exposing the very fact that Vladimir Putin's rule is unconstitutional, basically, Vladimir Putin could serve as a president twice, but he's already basically in the 5th presidential term. So this is unacceptable from the perspective of the Russian constitution. The very fact that he's projecting or portraying our allies, Ukrainians, as a unpredictable, hawkish fascists, this is completely not based on reality. So Polish response should be more active. We should do more in order to protect those who are actually oppressed by the country, which is potentially basically dangerous to everyone in the region. I don't know if that conveys everything, but I strongly recommend everyone who listens to this incredible show to basically to have a look and read what I actually suggested in this publication. And I'm happy to brainstorm with anyone who disagrees with me, with my intake.
Yeah, I think the publication got my attention not just because it's publication written by a scholar, but because it offers a different angle and perspectives how to understand so-called complicated and complex geopolitics of Poland. Because this is not an easy task, we must be honest. So yeah, I mean that article is a great one, and I think it offers. You don't need to agree or disagree, but you can have different perspectives, and those different perspectives moves you to different research avenues. So that would be my recommendation to read it. Let's go to some geopolitical questions. You argue that Poland is undergoing some strategic transformation after 2022. You describe Poland as an emerging regional power. But what distinguishes a regional power from, let's say, heavily armed frontline state, heavily dependent on American protection, and also has Poland genuinely become more strategically autonomous, or is it simply more strategically valuable to Washington?
Very good question, and I guess that Poland is different from this perspective because essentially we are catching up with our military. We are definitely spending extensively on military. We've become EU member in 2004. We became NATO member in 1999. We celebrated already basically being in these organizations for more than 2 decades, 2.5 decades in terms of NATO. In 2026, Poland is destined to become G20 member because of the economy, which is basically skyrocketing. We experienced the best possible 5-10 years from geo-economical perspective, because all of the suggestions picture Poland as as an example to follow, basically, Poland is very often pictured as a Central European China because we're expanding so rapidly. So, from economical perspective, this is great, and in order to sustain that, we need to basically have stable environment. We need to be a member of NATO, we need to be a member of European Union, and we need to stay in these organizations. But the problem is that our strategic culture is a little bit obsolete because we have still this idea that we need to prove something. We need to be strong enough to defend itself from foreign invasion, which is fair to a certain extent because if we see what is happening in Ukraine, that makes sense. But we should have a little bit different objectives. Yes, we should modernize our army, but we should not copy different countries. We should develop our own solutions. We should produce our military equipment in Poland or import it from different countries, not only from United States. We should also adopt different objectives. Because of the 45 years of colonization, which Soviet Union basically organized ever since 1944 until 1989, our economy was quite bad, in very bad shape. When in 1989 Poland became independent in a way again, we had lots of work to do, and we are still working with the same mindsets. But we need to slow down to speed up, basically. We need to change our attitudes. We need to aim higher, and we need to be a little bit more persuasive and more assertive in expressing of what we actually want. And what I see as an independent observer, because I'm not employed by any political party, I'm not working for government, I'm an academic who is offering the foreign policy recommendations in this respect. So from my perspective, the most approachable and the best possible aspiration for Poland is to become a member of G7. And I'm not saying that that will happen over the course of the next 10 years or 15 or even 20 years, but we need to have a very clear goal in mind. We need to outsmart Russia, our rival, but we need to do it in a way that it is basically that they cannot compete with us, because Russia is waging all of those wars both in Georgia and in Ukraine because economically Russia is a giant on the very wobbly legs, whereas Poland economically we are doing extremely well, and we should work even harder in order to catch up with the Western countries. So my article, my chapter could be also seen as a criticism of the former government, the Morawiecki government, which was basically formed by the so-called Law and Justice Party, the nationalistic populists who were ruling the country for far too long. And they were basically adopting all of the solutions which they were told. There was no innovative thinking. They were not brainstorming ideas. They were not coming up with some great geopolitical concepts, or they didn't have their own opinion. They were doing what they were told basically by Biden administration very often. So on this basis, I can see some quality in Sikorski and Tusk. They have independent ideas. They have capacity to change the reality of my country. And as someone who is interested in providing some insights, I think I will. I wrote it also with the hope that maybe that will help the current government to persuade the critics to their policy, to their objectives, because in 2027 we have a very important parliamentary elections ahead of us. and by the look of the things, the populist side is basically accelerating the Law and Justice Confederation. They are very anti-Ukrainian at the moment, and some parts of the society are listening to them. And this is very dangerous from the perspective of someone who is focusing on geopolitics and who is basically considering the situation, which is extremely serious. We cannot afford not to support Ukraine at this very moment in time.
In your article, you also argue with the United States as being the only truly reliable partner or ally. And some scholars might ask, is Poland becoming more American than European? Or what's the balance between being pro-American but still being pro-European in a good way?
Well, I think that's perhaps how some of my arguments come across. Maybe I didn't explain myself clearer, but I just want to say that the current policy of Tusk and Sikorski is very pro-European and pro-European Union. And this is especially evident during the Trump administration, because ever since 20th January 2025, when Donald Trump took over power in United States, we can see that there is a dramatic shift from pro-Ukrainian policy to more transactional policy. So, the Polish government is resisting that. This is against our national interests. What is in favor of our national interests is to be pro-American and pro-European at the same time. If we have no choice because, for instance, Donald Trump is basically projecting anti-European attitudes or starting some wars which he shouldn't start in the first place and drag us into some conflicts. This is also a strategic depth of Poland. You asked me this question before, I didn't respond it properly, but I just want to say that Tusk government and Sikorski were asked to participate in the war against Iran, both by Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, but they rejected this suggestion. So this shows that Poland is not actually an American puppet. And in recent months, there was a situation when American ambassador was in Poland was making some unreasonable comments about our Marshal of Sejm and Mr. Czarzasty. And I think that the way the Marshal Czarzasty responded to American ambassador in Poland also suggests that we are turning into the power to be reckoned with, and we are not the pushover of Americans. No more. We might be in the same transatlantic organization in NATO, and we are one of the strongest NATO members in the organization. As a matter of fact, we are hawkish. Yes, we are as a Poles, but essentially. We have our opinion, and this opinion is well explained by the Radosław Sikorski, who is one of the best Minister of Foreign Affairs we have had in our history. He is Oxford graduate who has been in charge of Foreign Affairs Ministry for quite some time, because that's his second time when he serves as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and he's also a very interesting individual, because if you remember from 2014, he was negotiating on behalf of Ukrainian opposition against Yanukovych when the events in Kiev happened, when there was the presidential election which was falsified, and he was actually the one who that was in 2004, and in 2014 he was there. So he knows more about Ukrainian politics than many Ukrainian politicians who are currently in power. So we have a competent team of people who actually know what they are doing, and I think that this is evident. And I think Russia is doing its utmost to influence the Polish society to change their opinions and be more against the government.
What's the public support of Sikorski and Tusk?
Well, it depends on the opinion polls, but sometimes it's more than 34, 35%, sometimes almost 38. So I wouldn't worry about the so-called civic platform, but I'm more afraid of the coalition partners, the left and the Poland 2050, which no longer exists, basically. So the situation in Poland is very dynamic, and you will see that next year in October 2027, it will be a very, very close elections, which will determine the future of my country, basically.
You describe Poland as one of the greatest geopolitical beneficiaries of the war in Ukraine. Why is that?
Well, Martin, it's not like we hope for this to happen. Of course not. But at least we know that what kind of intentions Putin has had over the last 20 years whilst he was in power. And this gives us a benefit of not a benefit of taking him seriously. And when he talks about peace, prosperity, and an actual cooperation, peaceful initiatives, which he always were suggesting to our leaders, we need to take it with a pinch of salt, basically, and we need to understand that the man is actually dangerous, and we cannot afford to be naive anymore. And for this reason, that's from our Polish perspective. But the international community should ask itself the very important fundamental question, actually. Can we allow countries such as Russia to be member of the UN Security Council? Because, you know, the main responsibility of the member of the permanent member of UN Security Council is to protect peace and project security around the world. So there's a little bit of contradiction here because Russia is waging wars. The same applies to United States, as a matter of fact. So maybe we should just replace these two leaders, Russia and United States, and create different UN Security Council. So we are a little bit more safer. And yes, there is another contradiction of me saying that because we are in alliance with United States in NATO, but you know, I don't think that Poland feels any safer when Donald Trump is in charge of United States, as a matter of fact. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I will go with this answer.
Let me ask you from the different perspective, and that's you also argue that Poland cannot afford a transactional relationship with Ukraine. But there is a politics of shifting, and it's basically grain disputes. There are some refugees problems with Ukrainian people being in Poland. Then the sort of nationalist rhetoric. We also had problems with the trucks blocking the roads and highways or motorways. So when we get into that, how durable is the solidarity that you speak about?
Of course, this is relevant suggestion that, you know, there are some variables which clearly suggest that Poland is not as let's say solidarist as it should be, but from my perspective we are still doing quite well when it comes to bilateral Polish-Ukrainian relations, and we basically cannot afford to be transactional in this respect because it's all about solidarity. And you know, we know that when we work together we can achieve impossible, basically. So a very interesting case, very interesting case study from the past. You know, many Germans suggest that the Soviet Union, the Warsaw Pact, ended because of the collapse of the Soviet Union and because of the Berlin Wall. But we see that in Poland as a little bit of insult because we started that. We see that as we see ourselves as someone who can basically stop superpowers if we work together, if we come together, if we support people in need. we can achieve great things. And I believe that, yes, Ukrainians are not perfect, Polish are not perfect either, but we cannot afford to stab Ukraine in the back at this particular moment. Yes, of course, I don't agree with many policies suggested by President Vladimir Zelensky, but he's a hero of Ukraine and hero of his people. No one, I think, agrees with the way the Ukrainian political system is currently based. There is endemic corruption in the country. They glorify Stefan Bandera and the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, some fascist movements. But we prefer in Poland to basically discuss these disagreements when there will be a right time to do so, when the Ukraine will be safe again. Currently, it is irresponsible to basically focus on those little differences which we clearly have with Ukrainians. We need to work together, expedite our support in order to support Ukraine, which is actually fighting for survival. And Ukraine is doing much better than in 2022. In 2026, it is actually Ukraine which dominated the software-defined warfare, and Ukraine is basically turning into the leader of industry, basically, when it comes to the production and coming up with incredible technologies. So we can learn from Ukraine, as a matter of fact. And when we respect each other more, when we offer our partners in the East more support, I believe that we can really achieve great things together. So this is the essence of this doctrine as well, the Sikorski Tusk doctrine. We disagree with Ukrainians, but it doesn't mean that we need to fight them. We know the limits, and we can postpone this disagreement indefinitely for now, because there are more important things at stake, and Poland shouldn't be the one who is basically who is basically causing Ukraine some headache at the moment, at least from my perspective.
There is also the third actor, not only United States and Russia, and it's China. What's the position of China in Polish geopolitics, and how do you want to balance that sort of relationship? Because on one hand, you have United States, then you have Russia, and then you have China.
Well, I guess that China is the country which is definitely trying to project its influence in Central and Eastern Europe. And currently, Russia is stopping this influence as well, because the One Belt, One Road initiative is definitely disturbed by the war in Ukraine and the situation in Belarus as well. As a matter of fact, Poland is blocking the border between Poland and Belarus, and One Belt, One Road initiative cannot basically function, at least the land part of this initiative. So essentially, we are acting in accordance with American interests in this respect, but we are also acting in accordance of our interests, because by doing so, we actually push China to basically influence Russian decision, because China and Russia, they are in a very good relationship at the moment. They work together in BRICS, in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So if China can influence Russia to stop the war in Ukraine, this would be mutually beneficial for all parties. And I guess that I don't think that we have such attitudes towards China like United States, because United States sees China as a rival, as the strongest potential rival, even stronger than Russia. And from our perspective, it is more important to focus on Russia. So this is the Central European perspective. I understand that certain policies of China, especially in South China Sea, or policy towards the bilateral relations between China and India, China and Japan, they tend to be unpredictable. And but from Polish perspective, this is a secondary matter, I guess, and I don't think that we would be considered even into China's sphere of influence. We are strongly supporting our position in transatlantic bloc. We wouldn't switch to BRICS or anything like that. This would be a little bit like too much from the perspective of Polish geopolitician. But I guess that our support for American hawkish policy towards Xi Jinping wouldn't happen. So this is something which we wouldn't involve in similar manner, like we don't want to involve in the war in Ukraine, in the war in Iran, basically. If China attacks Taiwan, that might change. Poland might become a member of strong anti-China coalition because we see Taiwan as an independent country in Poland.
I want to come back to G7 that you already mentioned. And also in your article, you say that the current leadership is working on sort of preparation or strategy to join G7 by 2050. However, we see how it was in South Africa, and we see how Donald Trump is forming or reforming G7 based on his strategy or thinking, or maybe mood, depends what sort of perspective we take. So how relevant is G7 for Poland? And do you think that when you join G7, what does it mean for Poland?
To answer this question, I need to say that we share something with China in Poland. Patience. We are very patient, and we can be patient, and we can improve our logistics, we can improve our geopolitical situation, we can work on strengthening our economy, on our political position, on our strengthening our soft power, hard power, smart power, sharp power, name it. And I believe that this is an example I've used to illustrate that we should be more ambitious. G7 as an organization, this is like an organization which is basically consulting things. The wealthiest 7 countries, before it was G8, so the wealthiest 7 countries plus Russia were meeting from time to time, once in a quarter, once a year, to discuss some important matters of global importance, because they knew that basically UN Security Council is not as effective as it should be. So from our perspective, being a member of G7 by 2050 is something which would contribute to the country's prestige, and it would definitely strengthen our chances of having more independent opinions, and our position would improve dramatically, basically. So it's more of the aspiration, and I guess that some parts of that are might be seen as part of political science fiction, because Polish economy is still relatively weak, because it's just $1 trillion US dollars. The GDP is basically it's just reached the $1 trillion. So Russia is basically twice as rich as Poland. So our more imminent goal would be to overtake Russian economy, and that could be happening in the next 10-15 years. By 2050, Poland should be perfectly well to be stronger, economically stronger than some countries from G7 bloc. This, of course, is a subject of our stable regional position. If there is a war which is happening next doors, this will drag us down, and that will prevent us from basically achieving the position which we should be in the first place. If it wasn't for 45 years of Soviet colonialism and some 6 years of Nazi occupation of Poland, which basically killed 20% of our citizens, and predominantly our Jews, we would be much richer as a country.
When we speak about G7, logical question is like how is looking and what sort of support do you have, or maybe when you speak with your colleagues, political analysts from different countries, European, United States, or basically you from the UN.
Well, I guess this is science fiction to many, but India is, for instance, having this dream of becoming educational superpower by the year of 2050. So those objectives are not far from each other, because in order to become a G7 member, we need to invest heavily in our education as well. So we are actually trying to compete against India as well. It's not only, and yes, I know the size of Poland and the size of massive India with 1.4 billion people, and we are just 38 million people in Poland, but we have ambition, and we will fulfill this ambition at one point in the future. Whether it is 2050 or 2055, that's something which is obtainable, achievable, and with a little bit of more enthusiasm, we can reach this point. I'm one of the first scholars who suggest that there should be such an ambition, so I stand by it from the foreign policy perspective, maybe not academically, because the evidence, it's not evidence-based suggestion, is a hope and aspiration type of suggestion.
The article also portrays Poland as a defender of the democratic world. And we know that Poland was always a country with so many people going abroad, big diaspora. There is a huge diaspora politics and influence. And I think in some way the diaspora helped Poland to bring those democratic values and ideas back home. But now we have sort of polarization of society. We have ruptures. We have some economic problems. We have sensitive questions also coming from the past. With the new Hungarian Prime Minister, it's also not going to be easy, because he tries to open many questions regarding history. So I think there will be some voices calling for different regimes, maybe different changes. So how is Poland trying to lead an order that may already require a significant shift?
Well, I guess it's good that you brought to the fore, to attention of the viewers, the strong Polish diaspora abroad. For instance, in United States alone, there is approximately 10 million Polish people, or people with Polish descent. So this is a massive number. This is like 1/4 of our population or more. We have strong diaspora in Britain, in France, in Germany. And the Polish minority in Bulgaria, where I live, actually, is also quite vibrant. So this is something which is a resource which is not used, as a matter of fact. Our Marshal of Senate, the person who is responsible for the Polonia, so-called Polish diaspora abroad, it's not as active as he should be, as a matter of fact. So if I was about to criticize the government currently, is their approach towards the Polish diaspora, because Polish diaspora these days supports the conservative opposition predominantly, and maybe that's the reason, but the government shouldn't be so short-sighted in this respect. We can use Polish diaspora in the world to basically achieve our objectives, and we can support them. Polish diaspora should have more influence around the world. At the time when Brzezinski was a member of the Carter cabinet, Polish influence grown rapidly. Brzezinski's children, as a matter of fact, one of them, Mika, she's a reporter in one of the leading shows in United States, I believe NBC. Brzezinski's son was an US ambassador to Poland. So diaspora is growing stronger, but Polish government should definitely support diaspora, and diaspora should definitely do something more to support Poland in a way. Maybe even if not by coming back to Poland, maybe visiting the country of their ancestors and discovering how Poland actually changed over the last 20, 25, 30 years, because Poland is basically the leading democracy, not only in Central Europe, but we have aspiration to be a country which is far stronger than majority of the countries in the West at one point. We, as a matter of fact, the Polish government currently is a supporter of Sikorski is a Germophile, so he's okay with Germany leading European Union. But I think that diplomats which will replace Sikorski might have a totally different attitudes towards French-German tandem leading European Union. Especially nationalists, if they are about to be back in power in 2027, which I hope that they won't, they might be a little bit anti-European or more anti-European than they used to be, because this is beneficial for them politically. And those particularities, this populism, which is the populist tide, which is basically which is happening in my country, is very concerning for not only for geopoliticians but many social scientists. And I think Fukuyama was writing about tribalism of modern democracy. So we also have some problems with tribalism, and this derails our geopolitical chances. But hopefully we will reverse this course.
Polish strategic culture has historically been shaped by insecurity, partitions, occupation, and dependence on outside powers. To what extent has this changed with the latest generation of Polish politicians, experts, scholars, leaders, and people in power?
Well, I guess that we are outgrowing these circumstances, and we are improving our situation in the country. And on this basis, the new generation of scholars, and I collaborate with many of them, especially from Institute of New Europe, shows that we are more ambitious, and we are outgrowing this doctrinology of Giedroyc, Brzezinski, and it's time for something new, for the new beginning. We are ready to basically lead, and this is something which is visible. We had Donald Tusk in charge of European Parliament for in charge of European institutions for a good 5 years. And Donald Tusk did quite well during this time. So Polish leaders are capable to lead when they are given a chance, or when they see opportunity. And I believe that what is particularly interesting about the current situation is the fact that despite of all of the cognitive warfare, despite of all of the nasty propaganda which is projected by Russia against Ukraine, against Belarus, and against some other nations, Polish people can distinguish of what is actually right and what is wrong. And as a Kantian philosopher, basically, because I also sympathize with. I also try to approach social reality from the political philosophy's perspective and ontology. As a Kantian philosopher, let's say, I can see that we have a strong foundation which will allow us to overcome the current state of difficulty, both in Ukraine and Poland. And if we work together, if we support each other, there is a chance for both Poland and Ukraine to form a very strong alliance, which will basically strengthen the European Union and NATO as well. I would like to add to that Poland is a strong supporter of Ukraine's transatlantic aspirations. We are a strong supporter of Georgian transatlantic aspirations, and we observe what is happening in Georgia with growing concern, because Russia is trying to take over Georgia without shooting a single bullet. And the Georgian political system is basically surrendering. So I think that next time we meet, we can talk about the Georgian political situation, which is rather unstable these days.
I want to ask you the same question from different perspective. And when you will say that Poland no longer wants to settle for less, then there are few points or issues. Especially, how does Poland avoid confusing ambition with overextension? Especially when you have those 3 points: American power declines, European unity weakens, and Ukraine remains unstable.
So the first one, I believe that the moment Donald Trump is out of power in 2028, we will have totally different conversation. The policy of this 47th president was dreadful for United States, for NATO, and for the whole Wild West, basically. So I'm watching the policies of unreasonable, hawkish and unpredictable politician who is in power because of his populism and because of his campaign of hatred, and this is un-American in a way. So I hope that he will be out of power by 2028, and someone who will replace him will have a totally different attitude, and they will restore the American strength and leadership. Because what is happening ever since 2025, ever since January, is deeply concerning. When it comes to the crisis of European leadership, I completely agree with you that and I don't agree with Merkel, but after Merkel's policy, but after she retired from German politics, the crisis of European leadership is more than evident. And politicians such as Macron or the current chancellor of Germany, there is no charisma to lead our organization towards more prosperous and safer future. So it is also an opportunity for Poland to step in, to do something about it, to offer different type of leadership. And we have various types of politicians. We have also this populist Dominik Tarczyński type of politician. He's extremely populist, and many people in the Balkans, in Eastern Europe, sympathize with him, but that's not the type of leadership which Poland should basically project. I hope that European Union will be under the leadership of either Sikorski or Tusk at one point, or someone from Finland. The Finnish president is actually quite strong, or maybe the Spanish prime minister may be stepping in, and maybe he will be the next leader of European Union, who will replace the current leaders. Maybe there will be some credibility, and maybe the optimism about European Union will be restored. But when you ask Polish people, the Polish population, about their attitudes towards European Union, some 71% are strong supporters of European Union and Polish place in European Union. The idea of Pole exit, so-called, is a dreadful idea, but many nationalistic politicians are trying to basically bring it to life, which is also very disturbing, because as a matter of fact, ever since 2016, Poland is slowly but steadily replacing United Kingdom as a third strongest country in the European Union, at the expense of British influence, as a matter of fact. So European Union is not without certain mistakes or weaknesses, but we can improve European Union by expanding. I'm also a strong supporter of enlarging European Union over the Balkan countries. Some Balkan countries are waiting for European Union accession for far too long, such as, for instance, Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Montenegro, which actually joined these days, but for sure North Macedonia should be a member of European Union. So also Ukraine and Georgia and Armenia are perfect candidates to be members of European Union, and Poland should be a strong supporter of these countries to basically to join, to expand our organization and to also reform from within. It's not in our interest to basically to leave European Union. It's in our interest, everyone's interest, not only Polish interest, but enlightened European interest to become even stronger than it is. When it comes to Ukraine, your third question, the war, which was supposed to last for 3 days, is entering fifth year already. So Vladimir Putin made a massive geostrategic mistake. It's a blunder. It's a terrible mistake for Russia to be in this war. And I believe that's what Dostoevsky wrote about Polish people. He was actually quite right, because we tend to take pride in derailing Russian objectives, and we will continue to do so. So when Russia will attack Ukraine or any other country, such as Kazakhstan, for instance, which many say is the next on the list, we will be there. We will support Kazakhstan's independence, and we will support Kazakhstan's transatlantic aspirations in accordance with Brzezinski Doctrine, Giedroyc Doctrine, and Sikorski and Tusk Doctrine, I believe.
If we speak about Russia, we mentioned sort of deterrence strategies and things about Russia that connect to war, to problems, to issues. But is there any coexistence recipe for Poland and Russia for the future, and how do you see it?
I guess that this is something which for sure could be achieved the moment Vladimir Putin is out of power. We don't trust Vladimir Putin, and we have every reason to be skeptical about his peaceful intention. So on this basis, we are not very optimistic about the chances of improving bilateral relations. Our bilateral relations are subject to basically improving our bilateral relations with Russia are subject to Russia withdrawing completely from Ukraine. The strategy of Tusk and Sikorski in respect of the war in Ukraine is for Russia to lose this war and Ukraine to regain all of its territory. We support Zelensky's doctrine unconditionally. Even if Donald Trump would want to persuade us otherwise, it is in our best interest to stop Russia and derail its intention. And we are quite hawkish about that. But that's not because we are Russophobic. It's because we are realistic, pragmatic, and we know what is happening. If Ukraine fails, Baltic states, Kazakhstan, and perhaps Moldova, Romania, Poland would be next, Slovakia as well. So we are still not ready. Our army is getting stronger, but we need another 5-10 years to match the potential of, let's say, Turkey or potential of Russia. Russia is a former superpower, so we are quite realistic about how this war would unfold. And we are also peaceful people. We are very peaceful people. We talk about war. We talk about conflicts. We become, many scholars focus on this geopolitical dilemma because this is the reality which we face. Maybe it's a little bit related to post-traumatic stress disorder because we see what is happening to our Ukrainian brothers. But essentially, in order for Poland to be peaceful, to be strong and prosperous, we need to have the region which is peace, strong and prosperous, and we need Ukraine to be fully independent in European Union and NATO.
The last question for today's interview. If you can pick up one issue or one question about geopolitics of Poland, which is under research, and you would recommend it to young or junior researchers or postdocs to put some effort, what it would be?
Our values. Strangely, our values, the strength of our conviction. We need to make sure to work on our values, on our ideas, on our democratic, the underpinning of our democracy and how it relates to geopolitics, because there is something there is something extremely interesting about the relations of ideas, realism, and geopolitics, geoeconomy. The world is so incredibly interdependent. We live in the globalized world, that some ideas from the past are dominating the sphere of policymaking world, and the values are not always fully represented in the debates about geopolitics. But we try to change. We try to change that in our think tank, in Statu Nascendi think tank. We try to focus on geopolitics from different perspective than constant talk about interconnectors, about the gas pipelines, the diversification of resources, or buying military equipment and strengthening our army, adjusting to software-defined warfare. Those are important topics, of course, but how our values, how our ideas are related to what we actually achieve, what we want to achieve, this is something which is not as strong in the work of our geopoliticians. And I'm quite familiar with the recent publications of many of my colleagues, but they focus on efficiency, on being ready, on securing our borders and stuff like that. But the essence of our strength comes to basically to our ideas, the strength of our political system. This also gives us soft power and smart power, which is far stronger than the armor on our new Abram tanks or F-35s, which actually just arrived in Poland, and we will have more of them. So,
Dr. Pietrzak, many thanks for sharing your research insights, your scholarly opinions and perspective with us. I think Poland offers a huge under-researched area regarding geopolitics, especially how the Poland is changing. It's very dynamic, it's very fast, and we should read about Poland much more. Again, many thanks for being on the IR Thinker.
Thank you very much, and I'm very grateful for the invitation, and I'm a huge fan of the show. I watched most probably all of the interviews, and I will keep watching. You have a huge thumbs up from me, and I will strongly recommend IR Thinker to everyone, because there is quality, there is value. And next time, let's talk about IR theory, because IR theory is as fascinating as geopolitical, geoeconomy. Thank you very much for this great opportunity.
Thank you very much, and sure, we can meet next time and elaborate on different topics.
Thank you so much.